Hello and welcome to TMR Now. I am Chris and today we're going to be doing just a quick sequence just to mobilize the pelvis. Let's get into it. So I'm going to start lying on my back. Naturally, because we're doing a pelvis inspired mat, we start with pelvic clocks. So you're going to imagine that there is a clock sitting behind the pelvis on the mat. So 12 o'clock behind the belly button, 3 behind the left pelvis, 6 behind the tail, and 9 behind the right pelvis. We're going to start by tilting to the 12 and 6, so forward and back. So take a breath in, and then breathe out. Feel the tailbone glide to the back of the knees to get to your 12. As you breathe in, pubic bone dives over to the heels to get to 6. And then repeat. And what we're trying to look for here is try to have the movement driven from the muscles around the pelvis rather than the feet. So you can even exaggerate this feeling. Say you're trying to get to 12 o'clock and feel like you're about to lift up into a bridge using a lot of leg effort and then lower down. Now see if you can do the opposite. Should feel like the feet have minimal weight on the floor, and then without getting the feet heavier, tilt to your 12. And then do the same as you go to your 6. One more in each. Now we go to the 3 and 9. So to drop to 3, so the back of the left pelvis, I'm going to send my right thigh away from me more. Really exaggerate that feeling and resist kind of swaying the knees to the side. The knees kind of travel forward and back like train tracks. Then let's get to the 9 o'clock. Track the left knee away from the head. And then repeat. And feel free to exaggerate this movement of the thigh, the opposite thigh reaching away, or the opposite thigh to the hip that drops down. One more of each. And then we take it into a circle. So you're going to start at the 12 o'clock. And then as you breathe in, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Same idea here. The knees can travel forward and back relative to one another, but they're not swaying outside of the train tracks. One more full circle. And then reverse. And then you can just tune into the parts of the circle or the parts of the clock that may feel more restricted than others. And each time you get to that number, just pay a little bit more attention to that. Very good. So now we're going to stay in the center of the clock. Do a simple movement called bent knee fall out. So you're going to start, as you breathe in, allow the thigh bones to rotate outwards, resting onto the outer blades of the feet. And then breathe out to draw everything back in. And we're trying to stay in the center of the clock for this one. So how far can you open your legs out without tilting to 6? That's what tends to happen. And then spiraling back in. Now, you can now imagine that the air or the room is now filled with honey. So there's a sense of resistance to draw the legs open. And then a resistance to draw the legs in. And then let's either stay with that variation if that feels good for you. Otherwise, we'll create this resistance with our hands. So pick your legs up. I'm going to press my hands outwards into my legs. And then the legs are trying to draw in. So it's like there's a tug of war going on here. You can bring the knees in a little bit just to settle your back lower ribs into the mat. So here, neither arms nor legs are winning. And then now, start to let the arms win. But the legs are still trying to draw in. And then now let the legs win, but the arms are still trying to push out. We'll do 2 more here. And then now you can just start to pay attention to your sitting bones or your sit bones. And naturally, as you open out, it's the sit bones that initiate the opening of the legs. and then the sit bones drawing in to initiate the closing of the legs. Bring the hands on the outside of the legs, and then repeat this process. So this time, hands press in, legs press out. Legs now start to win, and as you do that, the sit bones fan open. So if there were searchlights coming out of your sit bones, they're shining wide, and then shine them narrow as the legs come to center. And again, twice more. And of course, we are breathing, hopefully. We're going into a slow movement here, so just keep the breath consistent. Wonderful. Lay the feet down. Arms by the side of the body, and then we go into pelvic curls. So start with the pelvis level, so you're in the center of your clock. Get the sense of your seat or your sit bones reaching towards your heels, and without moving your heels on the floor, draw them towards your seat. Opening your collarbones. Now, as you breathe out, initiate your peel by going to your 12 o'clock. And then continually roll up, feel the tailbone track over your knees, and your knees tracking over your second toes. Now, as you roll down, soften down from the chest, the ribs, the lower back, and the tail. And you want to stay at that 12 o'clock for as long as possible, and only at the end do you reset to the center of the clock and the hip crease folds. Let's go again. So as you get to your 12 o'clock, the front of the hips open, and there'll be a narrowing of the back of the pelvis. And you want to maintain that as you roll down. So narrowing of the back of the pelvis and a widening of the front until right at the end where we let the hip crease fold and the back of the pelvis widens. Just do that a couple more times. And roll down. And one. Very good. Come up into a 4-point kneel. And then let's get into some cat-cows. And let's just do a couple, just curl and arch your back. So this time, let's try to do it, but drive the movement from the pelvis. So as you're curling your spine, so rounding your spine up to the ceiling, think about your sit bones narrowing, the front of the hips opening and broadening. And then as you extend, sit bones wide, front of the hips narrow and fold, and the chest goes forward. And again. So I'm going in exhale as I curl. Inhale to extend, because that helps me feel that drawing in of the sit bones as I curl and widening as I extend. Though if you do the opposite, that's also okay. Very good. Let's finish off in a Z sit. So let's just start here. For some of you, if it may feel, what I'll say is, if this doesn't feel comfortable, you also have an option of sitting on a rolled up towel just to elevate the hips. But otherwise, let's just start with this variation here. So typically this is the hip that is harder to anchor down. So you're going to place your hand on this thigh. So I'm starting on my right thigh. I'm going to rotate to the left and allow that thigh to rotate inwards. And then to help me drop that sit bone down, you're going to spiral that thigh open in order to drop the hip down. Just do that 4 more times. And I do love a Z sit because it allows you to externally rotate the front leg, internally rotate the back leg. Very useful for hip mobility. So to add to this, if this feels okay for you, press both feet or both shins down into the floor, hips lift, and then twist. So I'm going to reach to that wall over there, feel the opening of the front of the hip. Come back to center, fold from the front of the hip, sit bones wide, and then coming back. So as I come up, press the shins down. In that starting movement, the sit bones fan open, so those searchlights shine backwards and wide. Then I lift up, sit bones narrow, and twist. Center, hinge, and then come back up. Two more. So sit bones wide, then they narrow to lift. And then it's as if my pelvis or my pelvic floor absorbs my descent, and then I come back up. And once more. Very good. Now let's come up, switch the legs. And then once again, we start with the rotation of this thigh bone to help drop that sit bone down, making it a little bit easier to kind of be in the Z sit on the back leg. Once more. Next movement. Hinge, press up, twist, center, hinge, and back. So you can even imagine your pelvic floor, which is essentially the two sitting bones, pubic bone and tailbone, to be like a trampoline. So in this starting movement, it's like we're loading into the trampoline, then we use that elasticity to come back up, and then you're loading into the trampoline, building the elastic recoil, and then reset. Two more. Use this to lift and twist and center, load, unload. Once more. And up and twist and center. There you go. So, thanks for joining me today. Hope your pelvis is feeling a little bit more mobile than when you started. See you next time.